Hi, everybody. I'm going to get my Instagram started and then we'll get this Q&A on the road. Hold on one second. All right, Instagram, catch up. I got to fix that interface. It should be better than that. Okay, guys, we are good to go. Welcome to Crushing Doubts Q&A. Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. I'm Dr. Dan Ratner. I'm here, as always, to talk about mind-body issues. And let's just talk briefly about what that is. Of course, that is exactly what it sounds like, but it covers the gamut, with your whole body, head to toe. Anything your body can do, your mind can use it for those purposes. Now, that doesn't mean that everything is a mind-body issue, but most things actually are. And why do I talk about these things? Well, I had 8 years of chronic everyday back pain. I read Dr. Sarno. I got great information, and that put me on the path to recovery, but I still needed to get my questions answered. And that's why I do these Q&As, is to make sure that people have a way to get their questions answered. Pretty much everything I do is built around what I wish was there. Either what I wished was there when I was trying to get better, or what I found as I thought about it is needed for you guys. So that's what I'm here for. We're going to answer all these questions in terms of my system, which is called the 3-column system, or columns work. We can call it whatever we want, but the basic gist is there are 3 main areas that people have issues in that lead to mind-body symptoms. To make it really, really simple, the way to think about it is that it's feelings, thinking, and your relationship with yourself. And that's pretty much going to cover everything. Now, there's a way to think about that. The onsets and upticks of your symptoms, those come from emotional life, from feelings. I'll walk you through how to think about that. The symptoms that are seemingly chronic, that are, don't budge for some reason, that's usually because of how we're thinking. However we're thinking is the thing that just channels into our bodies. And if we stay in the same thought process, that's why the physiology stays the same. Meanwhile, your relationship with yourself, this is something that I call the power column. So the emotions column is for those onsets and upticks. The doubt column is for the thinking and the seemingly chronic. And the power column is for your relationship with yourself. When there's something in your recovery process where there seems to be something standing in the way, that's where your relationship with yourself comes into play. So I'm going to talk about those 3 columns. We'll answer all of your questions as much as possible. Fire away on those, okay? Let me first say hi to a couple of people. Trash Magic, welcome. I love that name. There's something about it. Rita, thank you for joining us. Rita is a mind-body coach in the field who actually is trained in my system, and a colleague and friend of mine. So Rita, thank you for joining us here. And Darlene, good to see you here on Instagram as well. All right, we've got Warren Henson here, Andy on YouTube as well. Susan Serena says, hi, Dan and our Crushing Doubt family. Susan, it's great to have you here. I love the use of that family term. Community or family, both are special in their own way, because this community is built around the idea that when you're trying to get better, you don't want anyone bringing in doubt. And what often happens, even in the mind-body field, is you'll go to helpful people or helpful resources, and you'll hear all kinds of helpful things. But then you'll hear one idea that sets you back. And that's what we try not to do here. Now, if there is something that I say that actually leads to your doubt, please let me know. It can happen. It's not my intention, of course. But if it happens, we've got to correct that. So if you get into a bad space about something, do let me know. Family, meanwhile, obviously denotes something even closer. And I do try to build close bonds here, because that's another part of the healing and recovery process. So thanks for saying that, Susan. Okay, Kasim, good to see you here. He says, hi, Dan and everyone. Lynn Slavensky says, hi, Dan and community. Good to see you guys, Kasim and Lynn. Hi, all, says Beatrice. Good to see you. Warren Henson, good to see you. All right. And Ani Crowfoot, good to see you here. She says, hey, Dan. Ani is also she's going to be a coach in the field, and she did her training with me. So, Ani, look forward to that. Okay. Trash Magic says, my name is Rachel. Good to see you, Rachel. I'm currently reading your book as recommended. Glad to hear you were reading the book, Rachel. Let me know if you have any thoughts about it in particular. One of the things I was most excited about with respect to the book is all of the conversations that are going to come from it. And we're just at the beginning of it. It was released in late January. Then it was re-released in terms of an Amazon release in March because there was a problem with the interface. But it's only been around a couple months, and there's lots of conversations that are going to come from it. So, Rachel, I really look forward to hearing what your thought is on the book, or thoughts. Hopefully, there will be a bunch of them. Okay, let's get to our first question. Warren Henson. Dan, I thought I was making decent progress. You were. Doubt is trying to wreck it, but we'll get in here. But I have had a huge uptick in pain. Okay, sorry about that, Warren. We'll dig in and figure out what to do about that. I think you thought so too. Yep, absolutely. How can that happen as I better understand your system and implement it? Okay, so I'm going to answer this question for Warren, but what I like to think about in terms of these questions is that it's not just for one person, every answer. Every answer that I give should shed more light on things to make more and more sense of things until you feel like, yes, this makes sense. So with Warren's question, this highlights something I want to bring to everybody's attention, which is progress isn't about how you're doing in a given moment. Progress can be measured in a number of different ways. And I say this in my book. There's a section in my book, which I can't remember where it is now, where I talk about how do we measure progress? Well, one way that you can measure progress is your thinking better? Is your thinking headed in the right direction? Warren, your thinking, other than right now, it was definitely headed in the right direction. And that's not something you lose. When you make more sense of any of your questions, you are making progress. I have a line I say where you make sense and your symptoms make sense. I know that's not applying right now, but if that has applied in earlier moments, then things were getting better. You also, here's other ways to measure progress. Are your seemingly chronic symptoms starting to break up and move? That already happened for you. So you have made progress there. What you're identifying isn't a lack of progress. What you're identifying is a roadblock right now. And by the way, that's a huge part of what I do in my system. My system is about identifying the roadblock of the moment and breaking through it. So nothing bad is happening here. There's just a chance for more information, more expansion in your progress. So let's talk about what could be going on there right now, and then we'll do some follow-up. You mentioned two things in an email that I saw that you sent, which relates to this. One is that when the symptoms go up, your doubt comes crashing in, and you have not yet mastered that entirely. But you have made progress with that. You did have some symptoms go up and see their emotional link, and that was actually encouraging to you. What happens with doubt is we often forget. We forget what was encouraging before. Doubt has a way of just putting a smoke screen over that so we don't even remember it. But the reality is, Warren, you have made progress, and I need to remind you of some of those things. On top of it, I need to remind you of the direction of things. And that is that your upticks in pain, and this is true for anybody, upticks in pain happen either for emotional reasons, which is usually the issue, or because there was a doubt trigger of some kind. And a doubt trigger is where you had some kind of experience. Like, let's say you went for a hike and then you had pain and then you got worried about it. Well, that was a trigger from the environment, but usually that doesn't even happen without there being some kind of emotional correlate. This is doubt fooling you again that it isn't emotional. And yet, in the message you gave to me, you recognized that there actually was something emotional going on. What you don't really believe yet is that recognition can bring down the symptoms right then and there. And there's something we need to break through with that. Let's continue to do follow-up questions and get you more information on that, because that's a big part of how this works. This is an ongoing conversation where you got to get more information, and there's a give and take to it. Now, these Q&As are great, but on my website, www.crushingdoubt.com, you can also get access to my group membership. Warren, you're part of that, so you get to utilize that. But one of the advantages of that is, in a situation like this, I could have that give and take. I could say, wait, hold on, tell me more about this. Warren could say, wait, what did you mean by that? And there could be a lot more progress in one sitting. So please do consider, and you can also contact me, Dan@crushingdoubt.com, if you have questions about this. So you got to keep the questions coming. There's always going to be a second question. All right, well, if that's true, then what do I need to do? How do I recognize that emotional experience? Why will that help? Why is it not working? You need to know these answers, right, Warren? So ask your next question, okay? All right. Andy says, hi, Dan. I am not satisfied with the way people are. and I tend to be close to them and try to change them. When unable to do so, I tend to get angry, hurt, and feel that I failed, or maybe feel failed by them. Um, Apart from that, so I don't know if you were saying apart from that you are satisfied, or that's the main reason you're dissatisfied. But tell me more about that, okay? Now, let me give you basically my thoughts on this, which is another thing that happens in group, but can happen here some. So what you're recognizing, I would say, in a column sort of way, Andy, is being out of power. This is a power column issue where you feel particularly out of power with others. So you can be out of power with yourself, with others, or with symptoms. Now, you may be feeling out of power with yourself or symptoms, but you're definitely feeling out of power with other people, because what you're feeling is you need something from them and you can't get it, and it's frustrating. And you're certainly not alone in that, Andy. A lot of people have had that experience. But I have good news for you. One of the ways that the power column can help you is it can get you anchored in an experience with yourself that is better. It can actually it can make you feel empowered in situations you didn't feel that you had any power in, and this is one of those. So it could be that getting people to shift and change is something you haven't been able to do in the way that you want, in part because of the way the tools you've been given to go about it up to now. I have been very, very surprised that when I changed me and my relationship with me, there were big changes in how other people started to respond to me. So I have this line, which is when you change you, you change everyone. Now, that doesn't mean you actually change who they are or what they're going to do, but you do tend to change what they're going to do in that there are new parameters. When people get the sense, this is just an example, but when people get the sense that you are very serious about what you're saying and you're going to back it up, they change. Whereas if you're bluffing, they can read that. Now, I'm not saying that's happening for you, Andy. I'm just using that as an abstract example. What I want to do is change the relationship with you first. And when we do that, you're going to find there's a whole different setup with other people. Included in that might be that you're looking to get some sort of resource or some sort of good experience from them, and you won't even need it anymore. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but what I can tell Andy and everybody here is in the power column, when there are adjustments that you make with you, things can really change. Now, I actually do have a power column group. Now that's a closed group. It's capped, so there's limited space. But if people are interested in that, I want you to let me know, because these are people where the doubt is pretty low, but they are ready to work on their relationship with them and shift it in big ways. And what I have found is that power column group has been so fun to work in. All the groups are fun to work in, but the power column group has a particular fun aspect to it in that the leaps forward people can make are really, really big and fast. I call the power column high-speed therapy because there's a way of understanding these things much more quickly than happens in therapy. So, Andy, that was a whole lot I said to you. Let's follow up with your next question, see where it goes from there. Okay? All right, back to Instagram. Trash Magic said, hi, Dan. My first question. I'm working with my doubts around the weather impacting my pain and migraine attacks and causing triggering upticks. I'm wondering if you have any suggestions on how to work through this using the 3 columns. Okay. I'm always going to have suggestions, but as always, these are just my first suggestions. So whatever I say, follow up. It's got to make sense to you. Doesn't matter if it makes sense to me so much if it makes sense to you. So the first thing I'm going to say, and this is just something that I do regularly with people, is when there is a doubt, I like to go ahead and counter it right away. And here's a good example of how to counter it. Rachel, I don't know if this is going to work for you, but we're going to see. So the first thing I want to do is just lay out my take on it, which is that the weather does not ever really actually impact pain or migraines much at all. I think that what has happened is we hear about that. I heard about that, especially like with broken bones. They say, oh, when it's like rainy, it hurts. But I've had that experience. And then when I challenged it, that didn't happen. And if you think about it, It doesn't make a whole lot of sense that that would be the case. I'll explain more about why, and we'll see if this goes where you need it to go. But one of the ways that we can understand that this doesn't that this shouldn't work is that it doesn't happen for all people, not at all. So then we have competing questions, competing theories, I guess I would say. So, Rachel, this is one way that the column system can dig right into the doubt and work on this. It's something I call the two theory method. You take your doubt and you match it up with mind-body theory, like a really good mind-body theory, and you see which is more likely. The doubt here is the weather may be impacting my pain and causing migraine attacks, causing or triggering. That's the theory, right? Now, the mind-body theory would say, nope, it's not that. It is about your mindset. It is about your feelings, your thinking, and your relationship with yourself. It is about the columns. If we match up those two, then we start to see where there might be cracks in the argument of doubt. For example, does that doubt answer the question, why does that happen for me with weather, but it doesn't happen for other people? To me, the answer to that is no, it does not answer that. The mind-body theory, though, does answer that because you have a different mind than those other people. And you've been taught what you've been taught, and you have beliefs about what you've got, and you have experiences that build on themselves. So to me, it seems much more likely that the content of your mind as it currently exists and all the things that have been built into it are a much more likely answer than, and I mean this with all due respect, Rachel, I'm never making fun of anyone having doubt. What I do like to do is poke fun at the doubt a little bit because I want you to see that we believe all kinds of ridiculous things. We've been taught ridiculous things and we go ahead and believe them. And I have to, and I still do every day. Like it can happen where we're like, oh, wait, no, I was thinking about this thing all wrong. So what I'm thinking in terms of that weather stuff is it doesn't make a whole lot of sense that it would impact you in a different way. Whereas the fact that you have a different mind, that does add up more. Now, let's see where that gets us. This is the way it goes, guys. We have these discussions where I bring out a certain idea or answer, or I get you to look at things in a certain way. And then that moves where your mind is. What happens when we're not doing this work, which I would call doubt work, is your mind continues to think the same things. And actually, sometimes it even expands into doubt. It says, well, if that's true, then this is true. And then this is true. And then this is true. And what if this? And we start to scare ourselves. So having a conversation with me can help with that. All right, Rachel, let me know what you think about that as a starting point, and we'll keep going. All right, Laura Jean, thank you for joining us here. Maria Llewellyn, thank you for joining us as well. And Dahlia's Yoga, thank you for joining us here. Now, I have this thing up on the screen, the Crushing Doubt book, available now at www.crushingdoubtbook.com. Why do I have this up? It is available on Amazon. That's actually the quickest way to get it delivered to you, but we are running a promotion for now. I don't know how long it's going to run, but we have I have physical copies of the book available, and if you order them on crushingdoubtbook.com, www.crushingdoubtbook.com, not only will I send you the book, and you can get a signed copy if you want, but in addition, you are going to get offered the seminar package at a much lower price, discount price. So the seminars are 8 videos of me. It's like if I took the book and distilled it. I actually created the seminars before the book, but if I distilled all that information about what you need to know about why in the mind-body world does one person say this and one person say this, and how do we think about it so that it all makes sense? I'm basically making sense of the mind-body world. Then I'm tearing down all sorts of doubts, and then I'm building out the system, telling you what the system is. It all gets you ready to then do the work in the groups or in individual work or on your own. And that's the way the system works, is get you the education and then get you the resources to implement the system. And this Q&A is really both. I give information, but I also help you know how to implement the system. So order at this link here, and you can get a big discount of over 50% off on the seminars. The book and the seminars together are the best way to get all the information you need. Jerry Provenzano, good to see you here. Scotty Stiles, thank you for joining us as well. Okay. Rachel says, yes, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. It is my pleasure. You know, one of the things that I often find to be, it's a little surprising to me, that Laura Jean, I see you said you're going to get the book. That's fantastic. I can't wait to talk to you about it. I've been really, really pleased with not only with the response to the book, but I actually get pleased with it when I read it myself. I'm like, ooh, it. I wrote it the way that I wished I had. But you know, things just do need to make sense. And one of the things that I often get really surprised about is how people just aren't looking at doubt. They aren't thinking about it in the simplest terms, which is simply just let me look at what I'm thinking and see if it makes sense. In some ways, it's as simple as that. I don't mean to make it overly simple or say that it's super easy all the time, but there are many times where we just aren't asking those questions. All right. Rachel said, thinking of it as the content of my mind creating this experience, that wording is helpful. Fantastic. Grab the words that work for you. Build that system in yourself about the words that work. She says, and doctors and specialists feed this doubt. They do everywhere. In fact, the whole world feeds doubt. I certainly try not to. There are going to be times where I'll say something that helped one person that raised doubt in another, but I can always make sense of why it doesn't have to raise doubt. So, this is another thing that happens in the mind-body field. We need to know that we're working with individual minds. So sometimes people are trying to just break it down to its essence and say, this is what everybody should be doing. But how's that going to work? Because you all have different minds. And not only that, you have different moments with your minds. So my system allows you to track all those moments and know what to do about it. Rachel says she's loving the book, which fantastic. Let me put in a plug for this, guys. By the way, if you read the book and it has been helpful to you, please leave a obviously positive Amazon review. It can say whatever you want it to say, whatever's authentic to you and what it meant to you. But those reviews are really important for multiple reasons. But the primary reason is that there are going to be a lot of people who have never heard about mind-body issues, haven't heard of me, and they go and they take a look and they say, what is this book? And when they see those positive reviews and they see people say this really helped me in this way, it makes a huge difference. So please do that. I really appreciate it if anybody can do that. All right, back to some YouTube questions. Okay. Beatrice says, my question is about doubt as usual. I totally understand that, Beatrice, but let me say one thing about this for the whole group. The way the system flows is first you bring down doubt, then you learn about the emotions to get that emotional awareness, and then you flow into power, where you make the adjustments to the emotional life. The emotions column and the power column are both emotional columns, but you can't get there if doubt is above that, if it's controlling things. And Beatrice, I don't mean this as a bad thing at all, but the part of the process you're on is we are bringing down doubt. We've laid a lot of groundwork for it. It's not where it needs to be yet, but that's why we got to do that work. So your question being about doubt as usual, totally normal, totally fine. Okay, Beatrice said, I keep getting pulled into new medical recommendations, and even when I don't believe what the doctor is saying about the source of my pain, I go along with recommendations, thinking I'll get relief. Listen, Beatrice, this story is one that thousands and thousands, actually millions of people have experienced. And it sucks because you know what? We should be able to go to a doctor and have them give recommendations that make sense. And instead, we're getting all these recommendations that don't fit with each other. I mean, a great example of that is some doctors say like, oh, you're hurt, don't move it. Other doctors say, oh, you need to strengthen it. Well, which one is it? And the fact is, it should tell us they're off base if they're telling any of those things. They need to have a consistent story that makes sense across the board. All right, let's keep going. Beatrice had more on this. So I agreed to steroid injections in my knees. And immediately once I got up, I had a really bad reaction on my left knee where I was having some pain, but I was still able to walk as of yesterday. Then Beatrice asks, can steroids make things worse? It's unlike me to regret anything so quickly. Anyway, so I'm not sure what's going on there. I was trying to actually think about what made me say yes. Getting lost in ways to perpetuate my pain when I knew I could have probably talked to my brain into not letting things spread. Okay, so you know what, Beatrice? Even though this was hard, this is an opportunity for a new win. And first, I'm going to answer your questions. Then we're going to talk about how to turn this into a win. All right? Now, first of all, you're noticing that you're getting pulled into these medical recommendations when you don't even believe what the doctor's saying. I get why you're doing that. It shows how desperate we can all be at those moments. I mean, when I was in it and I didn't have Sarno and I didn't know that I was going to get better or how I was going to get better, I would have drunk a bucket of sand, whatever they told me. And so I did follow all kinds of things. I changed diets. I, changed exercise routines. I changed my bed. I'm not saying any of this is weird to potentially do, but what I am saying is it turns out none of that is why the relief will come. Now, Beatrice, let's follow your story, but let's track it through a columns narrative. So you agreed to these injections, and immediately once you got up, you had a really bad reaction. Okay. What that says to me is that getting this injection raised your doubt. I have a rule of thumb. It does not matter what you do. It matters what you're thinking while you do it. Another way of putting it, if you're going to do something, ask yourself this question: will it raise doubt or lower doubt? I can tell just from the way you told this story that it was going to raise doubt, because you're going to doctors and you're going along with a treatment you don't. I'm not saying this critically, Beatrice. I totally get it. But you're going along with a treatment you don't believe in. There's no reason to believe in it. You don't trust these doctors. And now you're going to have that new variable that you don't know how it's going to work or how it's going to work out injected into the situation. It's a recipe for raised doubt. And that's what happened. I don't think you had a bad reaction to the steroids. I think you had a bad reaction to the doubt that the steroids caused. Now, your next question: can steroids make things worse? There's no reason steroids would make things worse. I mean, I suppose I'm not a medical doctor, so it's possible that somebody could have like some kind of radical allergic reaction to the steroids, I guess, but I've never heard of that. And not only that, this goes back to that thing I did with Rachel, the two theory method. Let's weigh the doubt theory versus the mind-body theory. The doubt theory is suggesting that you had some kind of crazy response to steroids that nobody else has, all in the middle of you having many responses like that, when the mind-body theory says, nope, it's all the same thing. It's the raised doubt and the worry and the fear that's ramping it up. And that's the only thing that happened. So by the way, this relates to power also, Beatrice. Again, I don't mean this is bad news, and certainly not critically, but you are feeling really, really disempowered. And it's making you think that these doctors have the answers. But one of the most empowering things you can do, and you're going to do this soon, is reject all of that and accept the diagnosis, as Sarno said. You're going to accept that this is mind-body. You're on the way to it. And when you do that, you won't say yes. You said I was trying to actually think about what made me say yes. And I think it's just a desperate wish that other people could solve this for you, when the reality is you don't need other people. You could use some help from me, but it's not because I'm this guru, though I am very helpful. It's because mind-body issues get resolved by your mind. If we can get control of your mind, we can control the body that it controls. Okay? Now, the fact that you were already thinking that you're getting lost in these ways that perpetuate your pain, when you knew you could have probably talked to your brain and not let things spread, that's a gain right there. Okay? So we're going to keep going with that. My guess is the next time around, you're probably going to reject that. You might even just contact me and say, I don't need to do this, right? And I'll say no. And then you'll walk your way through it, to use a metaphor about feet, because that's where you're struggling. All right, Beatrice, let's do follow-up as needed, okay? All right, Darlene says, I have a repetitive stress injury, which makes it difficult to do anything. All right, we're going to get into what a repetitive stress injury is and what I think about that. It's making it difficult to cook, dress, etc. It's been 2 years and just keeps getting worse. PT didn't help much, but I'm getting desperate. Should I go to PT? I'm so confused and frustrated lately. Okay, Darlene, first of all, I'm sorry you're going through this, but don't worry. I know exactly what to do about this. Let's start at the beginning. A repetitive stress injury, I mean, this is good news for everybody, and push back as needed, but a repetitive stress injury makes no sense. We do not have repetitive stress injuries. We're being told we do all the time. That's what carpal tunnel syndrome is regarded as, that we're sitting at a computer typing all the time and we get, our wrists get sore. But that wasn't happening with typewriters years before that. And meanwhile, it doesn't happen when you do anything. You could just bend your wrist over and over and over, and you know what? You could do it for 24 hours straight. Think about it. It doesn't even make sense in the theories that these doctors are saying. They say strengthen. All a repetitive movement does is strengthen. So they're talking out of both sides of their mouths. It makes no sense. Darlene, hopefully this will help you, but you don't have a repetitive stress injury. What you have, similar to Beatrice, is doubt. And you've been fed doubt. Now, the sooner you tear down that doubt and stop buying, and I'm not saying this critically, I'm saying it supportively, stop buying into the notion that you have a repetitive stress injury, you're actually going to find you're going to get control of this. All this is your doubt is raised by this situation. Now, Darlene, let's do follow-up on that, okay? All right. Ashley Nicole Conan, thank you for joining us here. Oh, Cohen, E-N, I think it is. But sorry if I got the name wrong, but welcome here. Laura Jean said, I love running, but my leg muscles get so tight, and I think I'm experiencing PEM. Do you have any suggestions for them? Okay, so, hold on. I need to look up something. So PEM, okay, it's post-exertional malaise, I think is what it sounds like, what it stands for. So I have heard of that before. It's something that's often linked with chronic fatigue syndrome. It's like another way of putting it. So I do have suggestions for this, Laura. And one of the main things, it seems like this is kind of the theme of tonight, is we've got to challenge what doctors are saying about these things. So they give us all kinds of labels about what's happening when really almost everything that's happening in our bodies is for mind-body reasons. So you love running, but your leg muscles get so tight. The way I want you to think about that is, why do your leg muscles get so tight? It is because of a mental process. Now, the columns can break down what that is. What is that mental process, Laura? And the first step, though, is to call it into question. When I talk about doubt, there are 3 steps: observe, articulate, and counter. Observing a doubt means to call it into question. Articulating, of course, put it into words. And countering is doing what I've been doing a lot tonight. Well, we've really been doing all of it. First step is to call it into question, observe it. I want you to question if there's anything going on, and maybe you already did this, but question if there's anything going on other than a mind-body situation that's making you tighten up there. Now, if you are tightening up there, it's because of a specific set of doubts, or maybe there's an emotional thing. But this is sounding like a doubt column issue. It's about your beliefs about the running. And then the running becomes a trigger, which then leads to the issue, which then perpetuates the belief, which feeds the doubt. But we can break that by challenging it. All right, Laura, let's do some follow-up on that and see if that makes sense. By the way, I know you're getting my book. My book will explain exactly what to do about this, as will I. SC Roy, good to see you here. Rudy, good to see you. He calls me Pain Detective. I love that nickname. We really are trying to get at the heart of what is happening. If we discover what it is, we can solve any case. Okay. Back to YouTube. Kasim said, went to the physiotherapist today. She said she was surprised I had full degree of motion in both ankles despite the pain and symptoms. The symptoms went down when I got home and changed shoes for a walk. Thank you for sharing that, Kasim. This is the kind of thing that just doesn't add up. And look at how many doctors and PTs and everybody, they're so damn confused. And I'm sorry to say it that way, because I don't mean it to be critical of them. I mean it to be supportive of you and in defense of what you're all facing all the time. It's the same thing that I was facing all the time. They should know better. I mean, they should be asking the question, what? So they're surprised, but where's the next step in that? The next step should be, we're missing something. This doesn't make sense. And instead, they say that you don't make sense. Oh, that's weird. Oh, you're different. None of that's true. They get patients like this all the time, but they're not stopping to think, wait a minute, what's going on here? Kasim, this is a great example of evidence. And you sent me a message earlier, which I'm going to respond to, but you were talking about the fact that the evidence really does not add up. And that's the kind of thing that can get the symptoms down fast. The number one thing you guys have to do is bring down doubt. Okay? Tom EKK, thank you for joining us here. Okay, Russell Crane's music. Good to see you, Russell. Hey, Dan and everyone. I'm dealing with a level 1 doubt right now. I'll explain what level 1 doubt is in a second. And I've already observed, articulated, and countered, but the symptom remains, so I'm not 100% convinced. Okay, so first of all, level 1 doubt. There are 3 levels of doubt in my system. Level 1 doubt is it mind-body or not? And when you believe that it's not mind-body, you've got level 1 doubt. When you get past that, level 2 doubt is, I know it's mind-body, but I think my mind-body symptom is harder to conquer than others. That's another type of doubt. And it's actually a progression. You're getting better if you get past level 1 doubt. Which, by the way, Russell has gotten past many level 1 doubts. He's just having one, which can happen. You can have moments that are just worse. It's like what I was saying to Warren. You can have moments that are worse. Level 3 doubt is doubt about the self. I know it's mind body. I know that every symptom can be mastered, but I'm not sure I can do it. And so back to Russell. All right. Level 1 doubt. You said you've already observed, articulated, and encountered, but the symptom remains. Okay. So there's a couple of any of those steps, Russell, there could be a hole in the process. Maybe you've observed part of it, but some of it's sneaking through as a perceived truth. So I want you to re-observe, and we can do it together. Or it may be that you articulated it, but maybe you didn't nail what the doubt was fully. Or it could be you observed it and you articulated it perfectly, but your counter's just not good enough. And now we need to know why. Now, one of the things that I'm particularly good at is coming up with very good counters. So I probably would focus there first, Russell. Next question would be, tell me why you're not as convinced. Now, if we were in group together, I'd ask you, why are you not convinced? And then you tell me, and then we go from there. And that's why we get so much further in the groups and in those face-to-face Zoom sessions. So, Russell, let's follow up from there, okay? Karen says, I read what Andy wrote and relate. I do know, so Andy was talking about feeling dissatisfied with other people and wanting to change them, but not getting it to work. I do know, I don't try to change people. I either distance myself if I can, but my job is dealing with people looking for jobs. It's very draining emotionally. I totally get that, Karen. Russell, I see you did have some follow-up, so I'll get to that. Then Karen said, I need to find healthier ways to detach, not care so much. I have very little room for anything lately. Okay, again, I want to put in a plug for the fact that when you're really, really satisfied in your relationship with you, you're going to find the problems of other people much less problematic for you. When the problems of other people are feeling really hugely problematic for you, it's totally understandable. We've all been there. But the biggest part of that is recognizing there's something going on in the self where you're needing that satisfaction or you're needing that change from them. When I'm in power, I don't need other people to be different generally, but I do sometimes make choices like Karen's saying about who I'll spend the time with. Okay. In the interest of time, I'm going to do kind of a speed round now and just not rush, but I'm going to get through each question and just kind of give at least my beginning answer because we're running out of time for tonight. Okay. Now, Russell did say, I did a harder variation of an exercise today and felt a strain in my neck that hasn't left. I went into the exercise with a small amount of doubt and it's presented itself. It's straining a muscle real? Generally speaking, no. I mean, you'd have to strain it like really badly. And typically speaking, that's actually a mind-body experience. In fact, the more severe it is, the more likely it's a mind-body experience. So our bodies are and our minds have evolved so much that they are actually designed to not have these things happen. So, Russell, I don't think you strained your neck at all. I can actually, if it's okay with you, I'll go ahead and guarantee that. That's a mind-body issue. That's what I call a doubt trigger. It's waiting for something to happen and boom, it springs it on you. Now, that's my first answer. Let's do follow-up. Oh, Russell then said, my counter is, how could I injure myself doing something I'm capable of doing, even if it's difficult? Yeah, and you've probably done it many times. You don't strain yourself. You just can't do it. Like if you're trying to lift a really heavy weight, you don't strain yourself. You just can't do it. That's it. And sometimes even that can be battled. All right, let's keep going with that. I'm just going to jump in with some other questions. Rudy said, always detecting. I am. Okay, Darlene said, I feel like I'm always fighting arm, speech, weakness. Okay, you are right now, but that's because you're not in power yet, Darlene. And we haven't brought the doubt down quite enough. There's a recipe. The columns, they work. We're going to keep bringing down doubt. I'm going to keep building up power. I'm going to show you how the emotions column works for those onsets and upticks. And the more it makes sense, the better you're going to feel. Oh, you actually said another thing. My hand ends up in a weird way and I can't bend my fingers. You are right, but why do I doubt when I know it's TMS, which is what Sarno called mind-body issues? Well, we need to find that out, but I actually think it's because you don't have full confidence in your own mind. This is such an important thing that I can say to all of you. One of the reasons I'm as good at the work that I do, but also as successful as I am with my own personal symptoms, is that I've come to feel that doubt is going to run screaming from me. I feel that I'm the powerful one. It is the thing that doesn't make sense. And the more I get you guys to feel that way about yourselves, the better off you're going to be. Rudy says, I've noticed Lyme diagnosis keeps coming up. Lyme diagnosis, I've seen it on other mind and body channels. Yeah, it does. And chronic Lyme, even most medical doctors, a lot of medical doctors anyway, recognize it doesn't exist. It is a mind-body experience. Now, they don't know how to treat it like I do, but they do know that. And tons of doctors think that, whereas the others are posing these really circuitous, strange ideas about all of these issues when the thing is, it's always the same story. And that's part of the reason I can recognize it so well. I'm like, oh yeah, I've heard this again. Now you're just inserting this issue. It's all the same. All right, we're going to keep talking about that. Kasim then said, is there a way I can continue to go to PT and battle this as TMS? I wouldn't mind strengthening my ankles as I have had many ankle rolls over the years. Okay. Multiple ways we could go about this, Kasim. So one is you can go to PT as long as it's not going to raise doubt. So you've got to be in a really good spot with doubt. I call this putting on your doubt armor. And I say that with doctors, but you got to do it with PT also, where you could just think about it as, okay, I'm just going to strengthen my ankle. However, here's the downside to that. And I'm not arguing for it anyway. I want it to be whatever you want it to be, as long as it doesn't raise doubt and doesn't raise your symptoms. The thing that I want to challenge is the idea that you actually have weak ankles. I don't think that's why it's happening. What's actually happening when people roll their ankles, believe it or not, that's a mind-body issue too. It relates to balance and how we're doing things. But when you feel wobbly, you're more likely to roll that ankle. It's not because of weakness. I used to roll my ankles all the time, Kasim, and I don't do it much anymore now. And it was usually related to basketball. And I just don't roll my ankles anymore. And I can guarantee you it's not because I did exercises on my ankles, partly because I didn't do them. But on top of it, it just doesn't make sense that we have all these weaknesses all the time. You know, if you think about it, we stay pretty in shape just from being human beings, walking around and moving. Okay. Meanwhile, weakness is something that gets addressed very quickly. It takes about maybe 3 weeks to get any muscle in really good shape that was weak before. I've done it many times. I've talked to the PT that I sometimes use about it. And, for me, PTs are most useful in terms of range of motion and flexibility. But guess what? Even that has a mind-body component, because I've tried exercises in flexibility, and it was like bending a piece of iron until I used mind-body techniques to get into the right headspace. And then I could bend like twice as far. So I cannot stress this enough. The number one major factor that you're going to experience in any of these things is mind-body. All right. Now let's keep working on that, because it doesn't matter what I think, other than as good information for you. But we're going to keep working on that. And one of the strengths that I bring to the table is helping against doubt, pushing hard. Okay, we're going to wrap it up in a couple minutes here. But Kasim then said, one thing she said was I would have to do a shock motion movement that would have me jumping and skipping eventually, as to avoid rolling my ankles. She said this would come after the strengthening idea. So listen, I've used PT to actually go ahead and strengthen things. And that's great. It's great to have your muscles be strong, but that would just be an additive. You don't need it. And yet, if you want it because it actually lowers your doubt, great. That's when I've used PT to great effect, Kasim, is when I've said, you know what? I'm going to make sure that this doubt that I have weakness is completely crushed by doing the strengthening exercises. Then it doesn't have any wiggle room. If you do it for that reason, great. Otherwise, if it's bringing your doubt up, I'd move away from it. And yet, sometimes moving away from it raises your doubt. So we've got to come up with a plan that is just going to bring down your doubt. Okay? All right, Susan Sereno, good to see you here. Hi, Dan. I did a lot of physical work and exercise today. I have bad symptoms after. I can't figure out why. It's because it was a doubt trigger. I did get scared of symptoms. There you go. And I still have a lot of critical self-thoughts. So you've got the whole recipe here, Susan. You got low power, attacking yourself. You got doubt higher because of the doubt trigger. And also the emotions column is firing because you don't actually know what those emotions are in the moment. The columns can help map that out for you. But, when you say I can't figure out why, and I hope this is helpful. When I hear you talk, I'm like, yep, of course. Yep, makes sense. I got to get you to the same place though, where you think that way about it. Okay? All right. Karen says, I've been having left hip pain very stiff since I've had hip replacement. I know nothing's wrong, but a friend told me about something that happened to her that had to do with a hip. I've been spooked since. Okay. She raises your doubt. We got to push back against it. Here's one thing that can help you, Karen. Maybe just hearing from me about it. When I was doing stretches to deal with a mind body shoulder thing that I just had to, I wouldn't even call it rehab. I just needed to get myself past the doubt and get past the whole symptom. I would try to stretch. It was the same thing I was saying, I think, to Kasim before. I would try to stretch. And when I was scared, I could stretch literally like half the distance that I could when I was not scared. Do not underestimate how much being scared dominates your body. And if we get you not scared, it's going to help. It's going to make everything better. Okay, Kasim said the idea of shock jumping exercises is triggering my fear that may set off my back symptoms, like earlier this week. So it won't unless you have doubt. Doubt is the only reason that these symptoms would get going. Now, of course, there are emotions column symptoms that can come out of seemingly nowhere for emotional reasons, but most of the work, especially when you still have level 1 doubt, is doubt work. I don't have any level 1 doubt. I walk around and I think of my body as a flowing emotion. I don't even think, very, very rarely do I have any doubts about level 1 stuff, certainly. But I don't really have doubts about much of anything. And it's not because I'm perfect. It's because I work at it. And I do have moments, but they're pretty rare. So what you're saying is this would raise doubt. You don't need to do it. There's absolutely no reason. In fact, you can do much gentler. She's not right about the idea you need to do that, by the way. This is somebody who has very limited understanding of these things, and I encourage you to be circumspect about how much you take that in, okay? Warren Henson says, thank you, Dan. I'm worried the pain goes up for arbitrary reasons. Nope, not at all, which makes me feel absolutely powerless. Well, the good news is, in my system, it is never arbitrary. It is never random, and these columns can explain why it happens. Okay. Maria Llewellyn says, hi, Dan. I've had a difficult relationship with my in-laws for many years, and for a long time, I found myself in the role of a doormat. In-laws can be tough. During their most recent visit, I finally found the courage to stand up for myself. Beautiful. But afterwards, my symptoms worsened. I get it. And even some new ones appeared. I'm now struggling with guilt and a lot of doubt, questioning whether it was even okay for me to assert myself. How can I process these feelings and start to feel more confident in the choices I made? Okay, so one of the things, Maria, is we need you to have the courage of your convictions, and that has to come from true understanding. So when you say, was it okay? Was it okay to assert myself? The answer to that, in my estimation, from a power column element, is you have absolutely no choice in your life. You do have a choice, but not if you want to live well. The choice is either you continue down a path where you don't matter, or you decide, I've had enough of that. I'm never going to do that again. I do matter. So, Maria, the answer to your question is, you're questioning whether it was okay. It is imperative that you do assert yourself. You need self-alignment. That's what the power column is for. Self-alignment can get you to a place where, oh boy, we're not going to get through all the questions tonight. I'm sorry about that. Self-alignment is where you basically, you'll get your whole body to relax, because the biggest tension we have is if we have conflict with ourselves. Okay. So you needed to do that, but I need to get you to, or I need to help you, or you need to help you get to a place of certainty. Now, how can you process these feelings and start to feel more confident in the choices you've made? It will come from recognizing this is what everyone should be doing. And anybody who's standing in your way of that is standing in the way of what should be. Okay. I hope that's helpful. I want to devote more time, but we're running out of time, and I can only take a couple more questions. I'm going to take some questions from people who haven't gotten anything in here yet. All right. Laura said 6 months ago, I got a mild case of the shingles. Sorry, Laura. The nerve pain has stayed, but it comes and goes when I'm sleeping. It's not there when I wake up. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes to come back. All right. Is there more to that? I'm stressed because my mother was in the hospital. Sorry. Oh, and thought she was going to die. Wow. Terrifying. That's how I got the shingles. And I'm a person that has high health anxiety and have had mind body issues most of my life. Um, I was always able to eventually get rid of my mind body symptoms, but this one is scaring me. I had a few tests done and they came back negative, but can this be a mind body issue because of my doubt? Yes. The answer to that is 100% yes, Laura. This fits with everything I would know. You got a huge scare. It was a big emotional event, and now a mind body symptom has more room to create doubt. I want to work with you on this. So certainly anybody who wants to reach out to me, Dan@crushingdoubt.com, or check out my website, www.crushingdoubt.com. All sorts of resources there. By the way, I want to say this, and I'll have to wrap up here. Unfortunately, it looks like I'm not going to be able to get more answers, though. Karen said my answer to her question was very helpful. Glad. Actually, I'm going to take one more. Andy said, Dan, I read your book and went through power chapters as well. How do I change my relationship with myself and be in power? Is it how I treat myself or ways I think? Andy, the key is going to be to understand why your relationship with yourself has been that way. The power column is, to me, it's this great thing that basically took over 20 years of therapy I didn't get to, but the power column, what became the power column, got me there right away. And it's all about a very, very particular way of understanding yourself. So what I would say, Andy, is probably you need a little bit of help of interacting with me about these chapters and how to understand them and how to apply them. And that's all you're going to need. All right. Now, I'm going to finish up on this. Rudy said, when is the audio version going to come out? Sorry, Rudy, I've been swamped and wanting to get to that, but this actually relates to what I was just going to say. Because the book came out and there was a lot more demand, I needed to restructure how these groups were going to go. So I've made some changes to the group setup that opens up a lot more space for more people. And right now I have these groups that have these back and forths like today, but even more back and forths. But I'm also going to be starting up essentially what is going to be an ongoing class where I will talk with people, but just keep teaching these things. And I needed to restructure that, Rudy. So I'll get the audio version is the next project on my list, and I've already begun recording it some, but it's not done yet. So stay tuned for that. But what I want you guys to do, if you're interested in working with me, is especially it's going to be starting in June. The groups are going to be different, and we're going to start talking about them even in these Q&As about how they're going to change. So if there are questions about it, ask them. Okay. Sorry I didn't get to every question tonight, but keep them coming. And one plug I will put in is if you join my memberships in various ways, you get even more access to me and the question answers. At some point, I'm going to have to prioritize that. So let's talk about how to get what you need. These are very cost-effective groups and classes, and I want to help you all. So guys, keep the questions coming. It's a pleasure talking to you as always, and I will look forward to seeing you same time next week. All right, take care till then.